Excuse me, sir. What is your name? And what do you do?
Who's your daddy and what does he do? Put the cookie down. Put the cookie down. Tell me who your daddy is. Put the cookie down. There we go. You'll be wanting to put the all saying on our banknotes next. Ha 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 ha. Think I went too far? They literally have Benjamin Franklin to tree. Whenever they have the last name of a tree or tree related, it's usually a witchcraft bloodline. Doesn't mean they're bad people. Just means you might have to deal with in-laws that are police and warlocks and literal witches and maybe sometimes vampires. Do you understand? Oh, it's just movies. Okay, I'll show you. The Romanovs. Autocrats of all the Russias. You get this book. You gotta understand that I want this book in hardcover, but other things are getting priority at the moment. So, I don't have it, but I'm showing you nonetheless and telling you to get it, even though that might mean I have a less chance of getting it by showing you. I do have the book, though, so I'm not really at a loss. I just want the hardcover, and I want it to look nice, and in case some pages fell out that's missing, that would be very interesting. I want all those pages, because I think there's like 1 or 2 pages that were missing. Maybe it was just pictures. I don't know. Maybe nothing's missing. So, that's the black double-headed eagle. Is a double-headed eagle on the throne. That's the guy who played Bishop in the Aliens movies, the android. He played King Cyrus as an old man, I think it was, in a movie depicting Daniel. He played a lot of characters. That's weird. I just lost my train of thought. Oh, in the Mario Brothers movie from the 90s, where an alternate universe where only New York, only Manhattan Island exists in this alternate dimension. It's a whole barren globe with just Manhattan City at the top of it, and it has the Trump-like character who's supposed to be Bowser living in the Twin Towers, both of which have been struck. Go watch the movie. Just go watch it. It's literally the T-Rex. They have this man act and look similar to Trump and Trump-isms. And he's supposed to be Tyrannosaurus Rex because they give the Tyrannosaurus in the Spielberg movies Coptic pharaonic eyebrows in their bone structure. You look at a picture of Trump when he was a kid. I have this on Instagram and on the shorts, I'm pretty sure, on YouTube. With Just Can't Wait to Be a King, sung by Elton John. What would be more perfect for that? And he looks like he already wants to take over the world. And he's like 1 year old in the picture, or 5 years old, whatever he is. He's got Coptic, he has the eyebrows of the Tyrannosaurus. They make him a germaphobe in that movie, Mario Brothers. It's a very entertaining movie. I might watch it again. Trust the Fungus. That's the QAnon stuff. And then after they trust the fungus and they do the whole Q operation, it reinstalls the Romanov king, who is Bishop. Damn you, Bishop. Yeah, Bishop in checkers. I can see you saying damn you, Bishop, in a game of checkers. He's an android. You gotta understand that like these people are all Kabbalists, so a lot of their movies have to do with each other. They call it universes, universities. You have to pay attention to what these people are saying over you, not about you, not to you, over. There is only without and within. If you ignore the without, you are without. If you only look at the within, you are also without. You understand? You have to get things externally. Nothing is given to you from your inside. You can't, and nothing inside your body can actually give you anything of real worth. Paul says this. There's nothing good inside me. That is my flesh. The Holy Spirit isn't in you, it's on you. It's right below the layer of skin and right above it. If not only right above it. You understand? Nothing is good within. That's why David said, I'm a worm, not a man. This is very important stuff. It literally decides whether you're depressed or manic or a psychopath. You understand? It's the struggle. There's a struggle. This man, I call Mr. Hittite, who wrote this book, he had a struggle. Why? Because he ignored certain things, or certain people probably tried to point it out, and they just got mad at them, and they unleashed their hatred of God on the person giving them the information. You understand? He always has to get really mad and walk away. Hitler always has to get really mad and walk away, go figure it out, and then come back. You understand? He didn't do that enough at some point in his life. Maybe his head was beaten by metal spoons or silver spoons. You understand? I got a silver spoon on a chain. It says Mr. Waters. So maybe he had trouble developing his skull, but you know. Let's just continue here. It's weird. His book smells like rubbing alcohol. So with that. Anyway, so he last said here, I don't know if I just like had a tangent that I was on and went off of it or not, but that just happens all the time, so get used to it. I apologize. Even though I shouldn't have to. Uh-oh. Is it playing this one? Why does that have a picture on it? Sorry, I'm having music problems here. Okay, pull up the chat again. So he continues on page 58. 5 and 8 is 13. The beasts come out. So let's see if that's manifested here, because a lot of times it is. Just like how on each page there are 6 swastikas. 6 sixers. These people are sixers. Vini, vidi, vici. I've said this a million times. It's a sign of a sixer. Let him who hath understanding. How do you get other understanding? Do I have to tell you how to get understanding? It's in books. It's everywhere. It's in the air. The birds tweeting. Animals making noise. The wind blowing. You learn stuff. It's not hard. So he continues from the last time. Now with my eyes open, not only to study the buildings, but also the human beings. This is Mr. Hittite again. This is a critique of Mein Kampf, Hitler as a benevolent psychopath, as a bad dude, as a sorcerer. I have to repeat that every video just so people don't act like apes. Once when passing through the inner city, he says, I suddenly encountered a phenomenon in a long kaftan, and wearing black side locks. This is against Torah. My first thought was, is this a Jew? They certainly did not have this appearance in Linz. I watched the man stealthily and cautiously, but the longer I gazed at the strange countenance and examined it feature by feature, the more the question shaped itself in my brain. Is this a German? Do you see how he keeps going two-sided It's like, do you understand he's a human? Even if he's a Kabbalist or dressed in black because he's going against Torah, I don't care. It's like he is this a Jew or a German? It's like, does this man even understand how actual societies work? They call them nations because they divide you into ethnos on purpose. So they can keep you separate from theirs. And then they make their own country. They say one nation, one ethnos under God, but it's Gad, dividing the spoil, Gadzilla. I watched, okay, so he continues, as was always my habit with such experiences, one of them not being just going and talking to the guy. That didn't happen here, did it? I would have talked to Hitler. I mean, if I had the chance right now and he was still alive, I'd be like, why did you do this? I'm kind of curious, just for a future reference. So as always with my habit, such experience, I turn to books for help in removing my doubts. Books aren't people. For the first time in my life, I bought myself some anti-Semitic pamphlets for a few pence. That's interesting. I always forget. Mike Pence, his last name is literally like a scanty measure of British money. Like a penny. But unfortunately, they all began with the assumption that in principle, the reader had at least a certain degree of information on the Jewish question or was even familiar with it. You see, and they do that right off the bat. They want you to feel like you're not intelligent so that you agree with everything they say. Moreover, the tone of most of these pamphlets was such that I became doubtful again. Yeah, that's what it's all meant to do. You either feel doubt or you blindly follow something. You have to blindly follow the truth. People might have a hard time wrapping their heads around that phrase, but wrap it around long enough. You'll get somewhere. Let's see. Moreover, the tone of the pamphlet was again doubtful again, because the statements made were partly superficial and the proofs extraordinarily unscientific. It's very. You see how, even though he saw these things, people need to understand the dynamics of building a nation. He did things too hastily because he wanted to be the king of it. In this book, he says some of the stuff he envisions is like 500 to 600 years from now. But then he tried to do things so fast because he was desperate and he wasn't trusting the Most High that he became the abuser. Do you understand? They take people who are trying to get away from that. If they don't trust in the Most High, they can just pull them back and control them and make them into abusers. That's all that happened here. They don't want you to know these things. They want you to see him figuratively on the street and like, I'll just get a book on him. It's like, why don't you go talk to him? Oh no, I'm gonna get a book. The book will tell me. It's like, are you part of a cult? What is your problem? Blah blah blah. For weeks, he continues, and indeed for months, I returned to my old way of thinking. The subject appeared so erroneous, and the accusations were so far-reaching, this is very true, that I was afraid of dealing with it unjustly, and so I became again anxious and uncertain. See, he probably also noticed that all these people being blamed are actually Soviets and part of his bloodline. That makes him anxious. He's like, yeah. You understand? He continues, naturally, I could no longer doubt that here there was not a question of Germans who happened to be of a different religion, but rather that there was question of an entirely different people. You're almost there. For as soon as I began to investigate the matter and observe the J's, then Vienna appeared to me in a different light. Oh, you started noticing the phenotypes everywhere, huh? But you notice that they're not quite Hebraic. They're a lot sharper than you'd imagine a Hebrew. Their noses are sharper, their ears are sharper, their eyes are sharper, their teeth are sharper. I've seen it. Call them canines after Canaan. For as soon as whenever I now went, wherever I now went, I saw jays. And the more I saw of them, the more strikingly and clearly they stood out as a different people from the other citizens. You see how this is perspective? Other people go through this, and then he's trying to draw them into a trap. He's just the ring. You're supposed to throw the ring into Mount Mordor, not follow it and make a nation out of it. It's up to the Most High to make a nation out of anything. Especially the inner city, he continues, and the district northwards from the Danube Canal. Remember Dan, Uba, Uberdan, Ubermensch. Hamlet was a prince of Denmark. Danube Canal swarmed with a people who, even in outer appearance, bore no similarity to the Germans. See, now he's talking about dress. But he's like, oh, their faces look a little bit different. It's like, yeah, you might be noticing Soviets, but then the Soviets are mixed with the... You got to understand why they're trying to camouflage. Why I emphasize the Soviet thing so much. That's why it was a Cold War. Because we are working on behests of the Soviets. And they're just spreading throughout the world and controlling countries and doppelganging them. And the U.S. helps them. That's why it's a Cold War. Because they're both working together. It talks about this in Daniel. These two kings will sit at the same table in alliance, but they'll always kind of be at odds with each other, trying to trip each other up. Both nations want to... All four of the nations from the one horn want to become the ultimate one that grows great towards the south, Africa, Middle East, up into the Middle East, and then towards the glorious land. So it does operations in North Africa and the south, and then it goes up to the Middle East, and when it's done with that, it goes towards the glorious land. Gee, I wonder what that is. And then it starts magnifying itself above everything as the grand old party, as the old glory, until it sits. It grows eyes and mouth like a man, speaks great things. Okay. A horn with eyes. Those eyes would probably be pretty sharp, wouldn't they? Oh, it's because they inbred. No. It's because they're mixing with Soviet Asiatics. Let's see. But any indecision, he says, which I may still have felt about that point, was finally removed by the activities of a certain section of the Jays themselves. Might be talking about Kabbalists. A great movement called Zionism arose among them. Remember Sihon, king of Og and Bashan? He was a Rephaim. They changed it to Zion because it's actually mentioning a weapon, a hand weapon against Sihon. That's why they say Zion. They refine it. But this is Sionism. Because remember, Shibboleth and Sibboleth, they're cloaked in Zionism. It's actually Zionism. Zionim. Synonym. Zionim. Isn't that interesting? Sounds the same, just ain't the same. So it's Sion. It's Rephaimism. It's literally Sixerism. Under the guise of Z. They try to put the Z in there. It's actually S for them. Like what a snake makes. Z is what a bee makes. Arose among them. Its aim, in his words, was to assert the national character of Jayism. I'll say Kabbalah, because it's not really... These are Kabbalists. They're wearing black against Torah. They're not following Torah. And the movement was strongly represented in Vienna. Yeah, because Vienna is literally vagina and penis made into one word. It probably points at France, Pharaoh's Ankh. if you look up what an ankh is, it's the male and female genitalia in one power amulet. They had their revolution first to establish the American Revolution. Do you understand? If you don't, I can't help you. I can't exhaust myself. This is pretty self-explanatory here. All right. He continues, to outward appearance, it seemed as if only one group of Jays championed this movement. See, these are Khazarians. He's going to steer you away from actually knowing what it is. Hello, George Coggins. Information about the 144K. That's interesting. That's what these systems are built for. Hitler built a system with that Watson guy. I forgot his name again. It was something Watson or Joseph Watson or something Watson, and they named that AI system after it. And it's like that guy was friends with Hitler and helped them create the system that they went to every mosque and synagogue and church and did a census. Oh, US 2020 census? And they got all the information. So basically, yeah, that system, as it grows, is probably meant to try to capture the 144,000, which will stand on that hill. They will not be Zionists. They will be Messianists. Oh, they will be like a Sixer, but not really. They'll have true dominion. Words reveal everything. Well, that teaching might be a materialistic way of saying a spiritual concept. Just like DNA is literally Dan's testimony. So the double helix is a double-sided. So the double helix represents these people's what's the word? When you're bipolar. So Dan's mark is literally bipolar people, and the guys who visioned this before they wrote it down, they claimed to have visions of it. Later science proved it. So these guys had visions of the double helix because they're Danites by blood, and they're witchcraft practitioners like John Dee. And the guy who discovered the benzene molecule, which they didn't change. He divined it by he was staring at the fire like Gandalf, and he saw the Ouroboros, and then it showed him the benzene molecule, which has to do with gasoline and stuff like that. And it has to do with a 6. All the molecules and stuff are hexes, so it's sixers. Molecules, burning of the Yule. Molecules burn in chemosh, chemical reactions, and produce new atoms. Out of sacrificing atoms, you produce new atoms. You understand how all this science is actually pagan? Yeah, Dan is the tribe of... it's not really technically... Well, there's good ones that can be judges, but it really just means to invoke man. Daleth and An mean to invoke man, so it's a judge. Danael is invoking man and God. That's a covenant. So Dan actually just means bureaucracy in a way. It's just invoking man. It's the IRS. Dan is actually the IRS because he sends you you get audited. See, Dan is the tribe who are having fallen to idolatry. Yeah, they'll also the ultimate Danite at the end. The old Dan, the Donald, the worldwide chief, he literally is going to present a god that his fathers had not known. That's AI. And he'll worship the god as fortress. Peace through strength is what Trump says. The old Dan, the Dan Ald. But yeah, like the tribe of Dan didn't get an inheritance, which you need faith to get. So they went up north. They ended up running into some familiar faces. They're like, hey, Aren't you the children of Ramses or the children of, whatever? And then they formed bonds. They fought in some instances. They formed bonds in other instances. They mixed blood, as Daniel prophesied. It's very, very interesting. And they're not named as the 144,000. Out of the 144,000, the tribe of Dan's missing. So it's very interesting. Those little things here and there. So welcome again, George Coggins. It's an interesting name because it's like a farmer and then cogs. It's just moving the cogs. Interesting. Farmer of cognition. Let's go. Did I say father? Farmer of cognition. I'm pretty sure that's what I said. All right. There's only one father of cognition. Let's see. The outward appearances. One group of Jays champion this movement because they're Khazarians. Vini Vidi Vici. While the great majority disapproved it. He's telling you the truth in this sense. Orthodox Jews in Israel get beat up by the IDF all the time. They protest the war all the time. Torah scholars protest the war, and they fought for a long time not to be drafted into the IDF. I think they just overturned that. It's a historic vote. I'm not sure if they overturned it or not, but I think they did, and they're trying to conscript these people who are just studying Torah. You gotta understand how they don't need them anymore. They have the AI. The AI already absorbed it. They've already unleashed it into the search algorithms. There's no stopping it. It's something that God allows. It's the great delusion. This AI is going to create so much delusion. It's God sent. Only those who covet, like Achan, is what causes the whole to be cursed until they get rid of the curse. Do you understand? Read about Achan. Read about him taking the cloak of Shinar, literally the cloak of Babylon, of Chaldeans, probably the root of this Soviet genes, Babylonian, Asiatic. It's literally Sinites. They're Canaanites. And the Amorites became the Babylonians, and the ones who wanted to stay Amorites just stayed Amorites, and kept the border of Israel. Isn't that something? Right on the border. Almost like it's all trying to tell you something. It's a type of reality created that's trying to tell you something. Very interesting. What am I doing here? Vienna, outward appearance. So yeah, the majority disapproved it. The majority of people, whether they're genetic or not, that call themselves Jews, they loathe Zionism. Why? Because some say Shibboleth and some say Sibboleth. And I'm good. That's why. I'll tell you that's why. Or even repudiated it. But an investigation of the situation showed that those outward appearances were purely misleading. I'm going to tell you what he means by that. These outward appearances emerged from the midst of theories which had been produced for reasons of expediency, if not for purposes of downright deception. For that part, the so-called Jays, which was styled liberal, did not disown the Zionists as if they were not members of their so-called race. Remember, rasas is just, in Hebrew, it means to divide. And it's has a negative connotation, a destructive connotation to it. Style, but rather as brother Jays who publicly profess their faith in an unpractical way so as to create a danger for the Jays itself. Yeah. Do you understand why they say don't read this? Oh yeah, I forgot. Greetings, bellicose hyperbole. Do you understand? He's telling you the truth, and then he ends up being a hypocrite later in doing that. And he claims he's fighting against Judah. He says Judah. And he says he who fights against Judah fights against life or death. And that's where he invokes God's name. He says, Gott Jehovah, Gott der Rächer. And he says something like, destroy them. And I'm like, Okay, you wanna invoke his name? You better be right. You better not be reaping wind, or sowing wind, because you'll reap the whirlwind, Mr. Hittite. What's interesting is in this movement, if you look at this Kabbalistic stuff, they actually say the covenant name of the Most High as a proof, they claim, that they're Messiah. I'm not kidding. You look into it. So when he said that, he's literally telling the Kabbalistic ones that he thinks he's Messiah and he's trying to prove it. You understand? That's why he even incorporates them into his scheme. But then tells you, yeah, it seems like the Zionist movement seems to be made just to discredit real Hebrews. Yeah, it's called Sovietism. You saw it in your Habsburg bastard family, didn't you, Mr. Hittite? So don't act like you don't know. Oh, they beat me with spoons in the head, so I can't remember. Yeah, whatever you say. Whatever you say. Whatever your excuse is. He continues, thus there was no real rift in their internal solidarity. And remember, they get the ones who don't agree with it to be scared to go against it because they try to build infrastructure that appears to help Semitic people. And it's not. Like, CARE is a Fed op to spy on Muslims because there's a lot of Semitic people within Islam. And then they make them think that they're going against their religion. It's like, no, they're going against something physical. It's written about in Revelation. Okay, let's see. This fictitious conflict, he continues, between the Zionists and the liberal Jays soon disgusted me, for it was false through and through and in direct contradiction to the moral dignity and immaculate character on which that race had always prided itself. Yes. Yeah. You understand? It's like, I don't know what they did to this dude, or if he's just lying, or if multiple people wrote the book. There's people need to understand that this man just can't master everything. He has thoughts, he has struggles, and they come and they go, point it this way and you'll be successful. And they can quote history and stuff he's learned to point him that way. It's his fault. You have to have a murderous appetite in order to want to accomplish things the way he was accomplishing them. Whether he knew about enough, he thought he was just going to send them all to Palestine. And that's part of the transfer agreement and everything. You just look that up. Who knows what this guy believed, but he did evil things. He had disastrous mentalities. So let me do this. Cleanliness, whether moral, this is him continuing, cleanliness, whether moral or of other kind, had its own particular meaning for these people. That they were water shy was obvious on looking at them, and unfortunately, very often also when not looking at them at all. The odor in the kaftans, they're called kaftans, remember, kaf, kefa, kop, kaftor, often used to make me feel ill. Beyond that, there were the unkempt clothes and the ignoble exterior. So, you gotta understand that what he's looking at are a variety of things. They put these people in ghettos and try to control their genetics to get rid of it. And then they tell you those are the bad people. It's like, yeah, they can draw bad people out of it and marry into them. And now they have half pharaonic, half mosaic type person. And they can use that to accomplish what they want. Do you understand? And so some of these people might be, they might just be Kabbalists. They might be something like a monk, but a Hebrew version of it. They could believe that the wells in the city, the groundwater is very polluted because the people have a very bad lifestyle that's not kosher or Torah at all. and it gets into the soil and it gets into the water. Maybe they won't bathe because of that, because they make them afraid. You understand these people don't have Messiah as a covering. So they might just not bathe because they're scared the water is going to be bad for their skin. You got to understand there's so many dynamics that are happening. People become one-dimensional. They don't care about anybody, and they read history with that perception. You're going to turn into Hitler, bro. Was he a German or a Jew? It's like he was a human being. You can go and ask him instead of going and reading a book like some introverted freak. He continues, all these details were certainly not attractive. You see how he's like a buzzard? Why don't you talk to these people? Because you're a buzzard. You're an eagle. What's he doing? All these details were certainly not attractive, but the revolting feature was that beneath their unclean exterior, one suddenly perceived the moral mildew of the chosen race. See, he's telling you the truth about what Soviets do. Do you understand? Soviets, they go into Hebraic blood countries and Abrahamic faith countries. They breed into them, assume their religion, assume their culture, and then try to destroy it from the inside out. It's historical. They seem to hate Semitic peoples and try to systematically destroy them. You see this in history. This is not a paranoid view. It is very well established in history. Well, then you can just be Hitler and go, oh, the Jews control history. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. It's so one-dimensional. You just got to figure it out yourself, because these people will just say anything. Absolutely anything. So he continues, what soon gave me cause for very serious consideration were the activities of the Jays in certain branches of life, into the mystery of which I penetrated little by little. I should just start calling them Soviets. I'll say AKA, just so you know he's not saying that. Was there any shady undertaking, any form of foulness, especially in cultural life, in which at least one J, aka Soviet, that's actually what he's talking about, did not participate? No, that's what the Soviets do. On putting the probing knife carefully to that kind of abscess, one immediately discovered, like a maggot in the putrescent body, a little J, a little Soviet, who was often blinded by the sudden light. Yeah, this happens, but they're Soviets. You see how I'm sure he's aware of this. I believe he's aware of this if he wrote the whole book. He says, in my eyes, the charge against Judaism, which in this case, so remember when I said social democracy is the veil he used when he's hating Christianity? When he's actually describing Soviets now, he's using the word Jew and he's using the word Judaism. But he's describing Soviets. I think he's very conscious, like a velociraptor, what he's doing. So in his eyes, the charge against Jayism, which in this case Sovietism, became a grave one the moment I discovered the J activities, or Soviet, rather, activities in the press. You understand? Why they take on this title, why they take on this culture, why they say, no, we're this people. Because you can literally get people to worship you just by saying you're another people that a lot of nations worshipped. Do you understand that there's genetics where like people in Asia are seem like they're bred to worship it? They see you and they start worshiping you if you're white and you have certain features. It's freaky. Tell you, I talked to a guy in Myanmar or something like that. Looked like he was living in a shipping container, and he just like kept telling, "Oh, you look so beautiful. How are you? You look so young and beautiful." It's like there's just like these people live in shipping containers, and they go and they praise the white people. It's so weird and eerie. Do you understand? Why do you think Americans like going to these countries? Because they can feel this. They go to the countries, and these people worship them, and they think they're gods. That's why people hate Americans. The reason they worship them is because they're the distant descendants of their past overlords that they turned into idols and worshipped. I'm not even kidding. So when someone from their bloodline comes on the screen, all they can do is worship them because that's what their ancestors did. It's freaky. So the Soviet activities in the press that he clouds in this word, in art and literature and the theater, all unctuous protests were now more or less futile. Remember when he starts feeding in more nonsense language? Not necessarily. It's like it's fruit. It's just a salad. It's a word salad. Whenever he starts making a word salad, you got to notice that he's preparing for something. So, and all unctuous protests were now more or less futile. One needed only to look at the posters announcing the hideous productions of the cinema and theater. Remember, these are Soviets. Then they pretend they're looking for communists in Hollywood. Oh, we sorted them all out, and they just so happen to be a bunch of Semitic writers. And then you look at movies like The Incredibles, the first movie and second, and you're like, how are these people making these movies? They call themselves liberals, but they make a whole movie. The whole second Incredibles movie is the family struggle of the conservatives. I'm not even joking. Of conservatives being forced to not help because in their eyes, and they're fooled, a quote unquote liberal government control. That's the Rush Limbaugh thing. Oh, the liberal government, the liberal media. I have the documents. Then you just get a clone, a more liberal clone of him called Alex Jones. You can't make this up. It's insane. Haven't quite realized the conflict between Torah and Kabbalistic Christians are treated badly in Israel. Yeah, the Torah scholars are treated badly. Muslims and Christians are treated badly in Israel. And the ones in Israel, the citizens, and the ones in Gaza and stuff like that, the ones being terminated in Gaza are genetically related to the ones in Israel that are also, through various means, who had the biggest vaccination rate? Wasn't it Israel? Oh, that's interesting. Wasn't a placebo either. Things are serious, but, people will see it when it's too late, I guess. One needed only to look, he continues, at the posters, blah, 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 and study the names of the authors who were highly lauded there in order to become permanently adamant on J questions. They take on names. Do you understand? This is why they marry into. And then they take the name and they're like, oh, I'm this guy. Why are they all Jewish names? It's like, because they're Soviets. They take other people's names and assume the identity. Here was a pestilence, he says, a moral pestilence, with which the public was being infected. That's what it was worse than the Black Plague of long ago. Oh, maybe he's giving you a hint of what the Black Plague was. Black nobility? Yeah, try to be careful what you put in the chat too. It can get marked. But yeah, they're Zionists with an S. And they gather Zionists, hover around them like eagles and vultures, literally because they don't want the 144,000 to happen. You gotta understand that history's even repeated itself the last 2,000 years in a very interesting way. I've said this before. It's because when God said, I've glorified my name and I'll glorify it again to Messiah, he literally says, I think he's literally inferring that he's going to repeat history again just to show that they can't beat him. It's like, I'm going to do the same thing. The 2,000 years before Messiah are just going to be mirrored. And Messiah is a mirror. Isn't that something? There's this 2022 stuff about mirroring. There's all kinds of stuff in the culture about it. But yeah, like sometimes Google can actually delete comments and chats or sometimes certain words can lure an AI to scan something more. But anybody can. I'd probably put that in chats and be like, "Oops, I forgot," because they do watch through words and stuff. So the Black Plague literally probably had to do with oil, crude oil, and discovering things about it and creating all these infrastructures first before the people even know that crude oil is a thing and it works a certain way. And then they're all like, oh, let's do steam powered and all this other stuff. It's like, yeah, because crude oil brings the Black Death, doesn't it? That people were like isolated from the Middle East for hundreds of years. Europeans didn't know what the hell was going on there. Africans are just being enslaved. Do you understand? There's just hundreds of years, if not literally, just read history. It's crazy. And they claim the Black Plague came from the East, just like they probably claimed it came from a bat. I'm serious. A bat in Hebrew is daughter. A daughter is a product of a mother, which is a government, an established government, because she's given birth. Do you understand? Black Plague of long ago, and in what mighty doses this poison was manufactured and distributed. Oh, you do not understand how good those words aged over time, Mr. H. Naturally, the lower and moral and intellectual level of such an author of artistic products, the more inexhaustible his fecundity. Good Lord, this guy. Plethora of nonsense. Sometimes it went so far, he says, that one of these fellows, acting like a sewage pump, would shoot his filth directly in the face of other members of the human race. Sounds like a big bear that learned English. In this connection, we must remember there is no limit to the number of such people. Why? Because they're not... He's giving you a false name. They're actually Soviets. And they're Kabbalists. They're Kabbalistic Soviets. One ought to realize that, for one, Goethe, nature, the writer Goethe, Goethe, nature may bring into existence 10,000 such despoilers who act as the worst kind of germ carriers in poisoning human souls. You see how he'll use deeper and darker language when he's trying to put you against something secretly. Like, he speaks against social democracy, which I don't agree with a lot of. He's labeling Christians as social democrats so that he can speak hatred towards them. Some people will just call people they hate gammas, right? And they'll spray hatred at them. Who gets called a gamma the most by these people? Christians get called that, simply for saying, hey, this is written in scripture and I respect it. You claim you respect it. You know what I mean? These people, it's the benevolent psychopath. Oh, I'm going to help you, but I'm a psychopath, and I'm going to insult you and say disgusting things about your mother or your wife or your sister or something, and you just have to sit there and take it. It's like, these people don't understand how slippery their paths get in the end. Literally, they're just blown away in a windstorm. They sow wind, they reap the whirlwind. They even make farms right where tornadoes just love to pass. They revel in their own destruction. With eyes of hatred while they feast with you, without care, like as if there's no judgment day for doing these things. They feast with you. They're ravenous wolves. He continues, it was a terrible thought, and yet it could not be avoided that the greater number of the Jays, and I'm saying this is a cover for Soviets, seemed specifically destined by nature to play this shameful part. That seems true about some of these Soviets. We're at the 50-minute mark here. And is it for this reason that they can be called the chosen people? See, he's half right about that. Remember, I told you that those of Abraham who don't fully accept Messiah, they will be turned into the chosen for the Antichrist. The ones who do accept Messiah will be turned into the good for the Messiah, the true Messiah. Do you understand? There might be 144,000 of them alive right now, just waiting, having some feeling that they might stand there one day. But you see how there's one vessel for honorable use and one vessel for dishonorable? You see why they even try to infiltrate these bloodlines, then claim their names? And they're called Soviets. And then their workers, like this one here, will call them something else. Why doesn't he ever say... I don't even think he said the word Soviet yet. No, wait. Soviets didn't exist. Bolshevik. See, this is the hypocrisy here is he'll end up talking about the Bolsheviks, right? Why doesn't he notice these things in these people? Bolshevik tactics. The communist Soviet Bolshevik tactics were to pretend you're the enemy and lie about them and lie about what they did. That's happened in history. Communist Russians dressing up like Nazis or anybody. That's called Soviet. They dress up. They play dress up in the woods. So he continues, I began then to investigate carefully the names of all the fabricators of these unclean products in public cultural life. Oh, you see why they take on these names? Because it's literally a shield for them. They're not even who they say they are. And he is either fooled into, at this point of his life, but then later I know he knows. It's like he can't just put this in a book later and be like, oh, if he really thinks like this, then he should have come to that conclusion, but he's allowing a demon to be in his view. The result of that inquiry, he says, was still more disfavorable to the attitude which I had hitherto held in regard to the Jays. In reality, they're Soviets. Though my feelings might rebel 1,000 times, reason now had to draw its own conclusions, he says. We got a few minutes left here. The fact that 9/10 of all the smutty literature, 9/10, artistic tripe, and theatrical banalities, here he goes with the word salad again, had to be changed to the account of people who form scarcely 1% of the nation. It's always how it is. And then they'll say, whenever they're spotted, they'll claim that they're of this people, but they're actually Soviets. That fact could not be gainsaid, he says. It was there and had to be admitted. Then like the elephant in the room, grand old party. Then I began to examine my favorite world press with that fact before my mind. The deeper my soundings went, the lesser grew my respect for that press which I formerly admired. Listen to the song Fletcher Memorial Home, Pink Floyd, tell you. Its style became still more repellent, and I was forced to reject its ideas as entirely shallow and superficial. To claim that in the presentation of facts and views its attitude was impartial seemed to me to contain more falsehood than truth. The writers were Jays, he says. They're actually Soviets. He's lying to you, I think, consciously. Thousands of details that I had... Because if he's like... He knows enough. He knows who they are. He's not going to call them Soviets, though. He can call them whatever. They were doing this with the Bolshevik Revolution. So the Soviet Union didn't have to exist yet. But it might have. When did it form, actually? Soviet Union might actually... So this guy, he doesn't have an excuse. He's calling them what they want to be called. He's using the right pronouns. I began to grasp and understand things which I had formerly looked at in a different light. I saw the liberal policy of that press in another light, its dignified tone in replying to attacks of its adversaries and its dead silence in other cases now became clear to me as part of a cunning and despicable way of deceiving the readers. You don't say. Its brilliant theatrical criticisms, that's what I'm going to call them, not word salad, theatrical criticisms, always praised the J's, authors, and its adverse criticism was reversed exclusively for the Germans. That's what they do. While they claim to be Germans, while they claim to be Americans, while they claim to be British, English when they're actually British. He continues, the light pinpricks against William II show, remember, this could be his distant cousin, but bastardized, and Wilhelm, he was the Wilhelm Kaiser, Kaiser Permanente. It's John Henry Kaiser or something, or John Henry was a steel driving man, or whatever BS they give you. It's Kaiser Permanente, foo. Gotta be. The light pinpricks against William II showed the persistency of its policy, just as did its systematic condemnation of French culture and civilization. These might have been real leaders who just didn't want to mix. And they eventually get them. There were so many assassinations in Habsburg lines, and it's insane. The subject matter of the feuilletons was trivial and often pornographic. Yes, that's a tactic of Soviets. The language of this press as a whole had the accent of a foreign people. The Romans and the Greeks, the Macedonians and the Greeks, all hovering around people who got their alphabet from Hebrews. Isn't that interesting? The general tone was openly derogatory to the Germans, and this must have been definitely intentional. Yeah. Good boy. Sit. Sit, boo, sit. What were the interests that urged the Vienna press to adopt such a policy? Or did they do so merely by chance? In attempting to find an answer to those questions, I gradually became more and more dubious. And they also like to mix with the most witchcraft of bloodlines. What do you think about King Charles being groomed to become possessed? Antichrist, Cup of Tea by Tim Cohen. A lot of people could be antichrists. I just think it's going to be Trump because media-wise, they try to false prophesy him as the Messiah. And these people go all over the world and they tell these world leaders to manifest Messiah. There's videos of these guys, they're Soviets, they call themselves something else though, talking to the Prime Minister of Israel, telling him Mashiach isn't manifested yet and there's still daylight. Try to make it happen today. There's videos of this. I'm not kidding. These people are being hounded every day. They're being told, you better manifest Mashiach. Look at the Khalid Lubachev making deals with all the presidents. Go look that up. He continues, then something happened which helped me to come to an early decision. Charles could be the beast itself, just teaming up with Trump, the false prophet, who I think the Antichrist is false prophet because Messiah is the true prophet. So a false prophet would be the opposite. So yeah, Charles could just be heading the beast system because the beast and the false prophet go to war against Messiah so Charles could just be the commander of the army, and Trump could be the false prophet that does all the signs. You could have Trump being the beast and Elon Musk being the false prophet showing all the signs. It could be a number of things. It won't be clear till the end by design. but you'll have enough warnings for where good people can avoid things, especially marks in their right hand or foreheads. So he continues, then something happened which helped me to come to an early decision. I began to see through the meaning of a whole series of events that were taking place in other branches of Viennese life. Vietnamese. Very interesting connection in their words. All these were inspired by a general concept of manners and morals, which was openly put into practice by a large section of the so-called Jays. I'm saying he's cloaking Soviet with that word, and could be established as attributable to them. Here again, the life which I observed on the streets taught me what evil really is. You understand? He's falling for their physical bait and calling them what they want to be called. They don't want to be called Soviets or Bolsheviks or something that connects them to their actual heritage, because that's a heritage that breeds damnation, and they think they're going to beat Judgment Day by breeding into families that are actually right. It's so strange, but Daniel prophesies this. You can look it up in the book of Daniel. The part where the Jays played in the social phenomenon of prostitution, and more especially in the white slave traffic. This is what Soviets do. I've seen it. People making trips to Russia. They work for the CIA. They have all these nieces. So-called nieces. Do you understand? I'm not stupid. And these Soviets played in the... I'm calling them Soviets. Played in the social phenomenon of prostitution, and more especially in the white slave traffic, could be studied here better than in any other West European city, with the possible exception of certain ports in southern France. Some people think that's the real Israel because they're servants of Pharaoh's Ankh. They're sorcerers, wizards slaying wizards. Walking by night along the streets of the Leopoldstadt, almost at every turn, whether one wished it or not, one witnessed certain happenings of whose existence the Germans knew nothing until the war made it possible, and indeed inevitable, for the soldiers to see such things on the Eurasian front. All right, that's the end of the third part. One more part after this, and I'll be done for today. These people are Soviets, and they seriously, prostitution and white slave traffic. Do you know what that's called nowadays? Prostitution and drug trafficking and human trafficking. It still happens. It's not stopping. Nobody's stopping it in the government. Why? Because they're Soviets. American government Soviets, Israeli government Soviets. The people aren't. They might have some mix in there. Vienna, Soviets. Government of France, Soviets. They're not Gauls, they're Franks. Government of Germany. These people are Franks. They're not Saxons. The British Crown. They're British. They're not Anglo. They're not Saxon. They're not even Norman. Do you understand? The kings of Spain, the leaders of Spain, are not Spanish in the sense of who the majority has lived there over hundreds of years, thousands of years. They are Soviets. Hitler is related to Soviets, much like I am, but he's telling you the lie, and I'm telling you the truth. Isn't that interesting? Yin yang, right there. Right there. But let's just put this music on, so I don't drag this out too much, because I don't like making the videos too long for uploading reasons. So in honor of, in dishonor of this, basically psychologically a monkey man, very, very intelligent ape, he's Gunther. Hitler is literally Gunther, and the Soviets put a little hat on him. This is from Futurama. Professor Farnsworth, Pharaoh, moon over Parma, bring my love to me tonight. Parma, bowl, papal bowl. Bull is calf, Caftor. Golden calf, can't make this up. Coptic eyebrows. I'm just going to make these language connections so you can do it yourself, because it's very exhausting if I try to explain and extrapolate everything I just said in the last minute. I'm just one person. I can't do it. It's actually humility to just not... It's not even it's not humility, because it's just knowing how exhaustive it is. If you just look at what I presented to you, you can make the connections, and I don't have to, like, my brain doesn't have to, you know, kaputs. So let me start this. It's called bat, which means mud in Hebrew. Botswana. Javan means mudmen. Pretty sure people in Botswana might have European features and not know why. Just like the Ethiopians are. Why do we look white, but we're black? This is weird. It's because they're being lied to and they don't even know their own blood. So, let's do this. It's got that heartbeat. Robot has a heartbeat. I don't know if you know that. But it doesn't have the nostra. The breath of lives. Nostra Elohim, Yehovah Nostra. Numa. Ruch.
I never knew hustlers confessed in stereo.